These are the Haze switches by Key Spencery. Manufactured by Aphelion, the Haze switches consist of a palm stem, palm top, nylon bottom, a 65-gram extended spring, and a 4mm travel. One of the Haze switches characteristics is that both the rails and pole of the stem bottom out at the same time, providing you with a more pronounced bottom out. I was given these switches to try out by my good friend in the hobby, Kiwi, who runs Key Spencery with his business partner. Though we might be great friends and all, I do not want bias to interfere in any way that can influence the results of the review. The switches come factory lube, which means some may not want to even open up the switches and just put it straight into your board. With the Haze switches, yes, they are very factory lube. 2 years ago, I did a review on the first run of the Gateron caps. Those switches, in my opinion, at the time, were really smooth and nice switches. But the problem was that they were overlubed to an extreme out of the factory. Many people had these GAT cap switches on boards or sitting still in their containers and found that a puddle of lube accumulated over time. Even with these issues, the Gateron cap switches weren't extremely sluggish or felt like the lube was interfering in the switch actuating, since they were lubed with a less viscous lube. The Haze switches, on the other hand, are sluggish and sometimes have actuation travel issues. Of the 60 to 62 switches that I received, more than half of the switches were overlubed to a point where the switches became sluggish and in some cases had inconsistent travel, where the switch gets stuck for a brief moment then bottoms out. While editing this video, I talked with Kiwi about the Haze switches issues, and he stated that he got into contact with the manufacturers and came up with the solutions to resolve the inconsistencies. With the current batch that he has on hand, he is working to go through each individual switch and making sure they don't go to the end user with the inconsistencies that I had listed. Some solutions include opening the switches and checking which switch are more inconsistent, as well as putting the switches through a switch actuating machine, spreading the lube out to have a better consistency. When opening one of the switches with a more sluggish and inconsistent feel, there are large clumps of lube along the spring as well as patches of lube on the stem that seem to be interfering with the switch's actuation. Opening one of the switches to feel more consistent and not sluggish, there is a noticeable amount of lube at the bottom of the spring and a fair bit of lube on the stem legs. Though not as much as one of the sluggish switches, it is still a considerable amount of lube. To resolve the overlube, it is a simple fix of just opening the switches and spreading the lube out for more consistency, or even cleaning the switches entirely through a wash or ultrasonic clean, then relubing the switches yourself. Once you have all your switches fixed to feel more consistent with one another, you get a switch that feels and sounds amazing. Having them on the Boob 65, you can't really tell much of a sound difference with many other switches, but when it comes to feel, you will notice a more prominent bottom out and a more pronounced clack when typing. So I went ahead and also tried them out in the Salvation, and it was a game changer for me. Probably one of the reasons why I like the Salvation so much, and even considered it becoming a switch testing board. But I will talk about the Salvation more in its own separate video. It's a bit of a disappointment to see a really good switch be stunted by a manufacturing flaw. If the switches came out of the factory with no inconsistencies, I wouldn't have had to talk about it. Sorry, Kiwi. I do think these switches, when they are lubed consistently, sound great and feel great. At least for me, I think this is a positive, being that you don't have to go in yourself and lube over the factory lube since there is so much lube already. Maybe placing a film is all you have to do, but there are some people who may prefer a lighter touch of lube, or maybe even no lube at all. Weird, but you do you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.